Hello everybody, great to be back doing another video. Quite a catchy title, I know. First, to answer the question, am I better than Gukesh? Definitely not. He's the world champion, he's a fantastic player. But I do have to poke fun at the idea that we've had similar positions in the past week where I performed slightly better than he did. So that's why I've got the title on there, just for a bit of a laugh. We're going to have a look at two different endgames today. One is from one of Gukesh's games from a few days ago from the Superbet Classic in Romania. He's currently playing at the moment round 9. So by all means, I'm sure you're following that already. But this was from a few days ago, and he was playing black against Ali Reza Firouzja. And this is the position. He's the one with the bishop. And we're looking at it from black's point of view. So white's pawns are coming down the board at black, and you can see here that Firouzja has got a rook compared to Gukesh's bishop, and is trying to win the game. He plays this move f6. When Gukesh correctly takes it, and then obviously gives up that pawn in exchange for it, and we reach what should be a drawn ending. That pretty much any move at all, so long as you put your bishop on a square on this diagonal where it can't get taken, you draw the game. The idea is that you're going to put this pawn on f6. This bishop's going to pretty much sit on e5 or on that diagonal somewhere, and there's nothing that white can do. But in this position, Gukesh played bishop g5, which I can't quite understand. Because he's putting the bishop, first of all, it kind of feels wrong because the king's attacking it. I know the king's defending it, but you naturally don't want to put your bishop where it can get taken. And he ends up going for, Firouzja plays some really good chess here just to finish it off perfectly, but, maybe he's trying to put the bishop here to stop the pawn, but I just don't get it. And somebody of his level should know this. Maybe it's the pressure of the game, time pressure, maybe tiredness as well after so many games played. Pressure of being world champion. When you add all of these factors into the mix, we end up doing silly mistakes, and that definitely does happen to me as well in some other games, just not this one. And so he makes this mistake. Firouzja attacks the pawn, f6 comes, and then rook f7. What a beautiful move. And here black is in zugzwang. The king can't move because it would be under attack. The bishop can't stay connected to the pawn, and therefore has to go away. And after it gets lost, now it's a case of technique. And the problem for Gukesh is not just another one. There can actually be positions where actually this pawn on h5 here, if this bishop was a light squared bishop, this position would actually be drawn. I'm not saying it's easy, and you've got to make sure you know your stuff, but actually the king is in the wrong corner for the current squared bishop. If you've got a king and bishop against king and rook, you want your king to be in the opposite corner to what your bishop is. Okay, keep it in the center for as long as possible, of course, but if you have to make a choice, go to the opposite corner with your bishop. I've seen people play king and rook against king and bishop and think, well, that should be an easy draw, and then they come out like half an hour later, and some of these won. It happened in the Welsh Championships not so long ago. A couple of, not this recent one in Easter, but 2 years, year and a bit ago. Johan Rees won one, and I don't know how he won it, but he did. So you've got to be very careful about these things. So here the king's in the wrong corner, and of course with the extra pawn he can't move away from that corner as well. So here he'd love to come this way, but he can't because the pawn will just run home to queen. So therefore he's got to stay in this corner area. And okay, h6 is played. It's a little bit of a interesting move because Gukesh actually moves away. If he takes it, then you're going to see something happen similar to the game. The king is just going to come down to this f7 square, but the bishop goes away. We give a check, we just eventually get to this king on f7, and now it's a case of, in this position here, this king is just dead meat. There's nothing that can be done by black to save this game from this position. The threat is to move the rook anywhere up along this file to attack the bishop at the same time as threatening checkmate. And as soon as that happens, it's going to be game over. The problem is you can't go passive here and let's say go here and then let's say try and block the check because it just gets pinned. And then the problem that black faces is they have to move away. And then you lose the bishop to checkmate. Even if you delay it a move, it doesn't matter. Check, bishop blocks, and then we can just waste a move with the rook, and you're going to have to move your king away, and checkmate will follow. So therefore he puts his bishop on this a7 square, and what Gukesh is trying to do is keep his bishop maybe somewhere around these squares here. and all Farrugia does is just attacks the bishop a number of times. And you see here how the rook is covering all 3 squares, forces the bishop out, gets attacked again. Of course, we have checkmate on this square if the bishop doesn't save it, and then he just goes up to the top. And you can see here how this checkmate is really problematic. It's actually quite interesting here because you see the bishop on e7. We'd love to play a move here like king h6, but of course rook here check, and the king does not have this escape square on g5, which is really quite interesting. The bishop has to block and it gets taken, and then you checkmate with the king and rook. So actually this was a little bit trickier. Of course, if the bishop goes to the other way, it is a little bit different again. You'd actually just win by going to here, and then you'd be given the check on h3. So yeah, really interesting position. And okay, actually in this position Gukesh resigned and it was game over. So 2 endgames there, the one with the pawn on the f pawn on, and how to draw it, and then also here king and rook against king and bishop, which corners to go with your king, and knowing how to win it. But the funny thing was that actually at the weekend I was playing black against Mike Surtees in the last round of the Real Open, a game I probably should have won earlier on, but managed to save the game here. Even though I was a bishop for a rook down, my opponent took this pawn, and now of course I have the choice: do I put the bishop on this square like Gukesh did, or do I keep it on the long diagonal? My pawns are already on f6, and I was able to see quite actually easily, I didn't really think about this, I was always putting my bishop on this square. I was always just keeping my king around this area here, and as long as my king stays in this area, there's nothing that he can do. And we played many more moves here, and you can play this out over the board. Just keep your king in this area, it doesn't matter, whatever you do, white can't break through. And it was a very easy draw. He ended up playing maybe for another 20-30 moves before offering me a draw because he couldn't see a way through at all. I think he even brought his king round at some point, but it didn't help. I can either get my king to take the pawn and come out, or just stay where it is, as long as it's not obviously giving checkmate. So yeah, it was two very similar positions there. One where I was able to choose to put the bishop on the right diagonal. Gukesh, I'm afraid, put his bishop on the wrong square, trying to draw this game against Farrugia. Okay, that's all for now. I hope you liked that. Obviously, I went through it very quickly. Please double check any endgame manuals for reference for these endgames. That's something that you should be doing. There's plenty of endgame material out there. But yeah, until next time, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.